Another dialogue where we go into conversation on Wing Chun and its philosophy for life and for martial art, and then of course for health and longevity and the development of powers. And when I say powers, I guess I mean them in all ways of saying it, in terms of like mental powers, emotional powers, physical powers, psychic powers, everything, anything. If it exists and we can manage it and develop a sophisticated approach towards utilizing it, we could say it would fit in with the philosophies that surround the art of Wing Chun. So what I'm looking at now on the screen is a conversation piece starter that I wanted to start with, which is an illustration I rendered just studying the cosmic wheel, or what some people will call the sky clock. And one of the biggest things you can see is that it is the largest yin and yang, I guess you could possibly put into our visual sphere. If you look at it from an abstract, in that the sun travels up and travels down, and this is how we get our change of the year and our change of sunlight, our change of seasons. Regardless of where you live in the world, this is happening. So I don't know what we're on. That's another conversation, but it's a wheel, and it is absolutely pulsing on a wave. And in this illustration, I just go into the different chunks of time, and maybe some constellations that would be identified with it. Anyway, philosophy here is that we live on a wheel, and we live in a constant state of change. And so adapting to change is not an easy feat. This is like almost the primary point of martial art and Kung Fu philosophy, is that you would adapt to whatever changes are happening. So this first change, I guess we all experience, is the change of our sunlight and the change of our seasons. And they do affect people. They affect the growth of people, or the lack of growth. So go into my next slide. Again, this is another illustrative piece that I put together on a contemplative point of about 13 as a lucky number, and in some cultures as a number they want to avoid. But I think if they're avoiding it, it's because that's a diversion. The 13 is incredible when you see that there are 13 moons. And when the natives talked about the earth being on the back, or the world being on the back of a turtle, they didn't mean a big turtle was walking around and that's what was holding us up. What they meant was that the seasons are illustrated in the shell pattern of the turtle. So the moon movement dictates, I would assume, the growth pattern of this creature when it's first being developed. But this has got to be back in the dawn of time. So philosophy here in terms of change is that we need to understand that the seasons force very important differences in our behaviors. So you can look down the center, and again, these numbers are taken from another person's chart, but it was re-illustrated by me. Down the center, you have 10, 11, 12, 13, and these are like storing your grain, hunting, resting, preparing for cold. As you go in back over to the top left to 1, this is like there's no leaves on the tree. January, there's you better cover your ears. The biting ear moon. February, March, you begin to see buds. April, storms, but also changes as the heat comes. May, you're starting to you might sow your early seeds. June, fruits are just starting to arrive. July, the vines are climbing. August, September, etc. And the growth, and then the cycle again and again. And allegedly, although I never counted a turtle, but you could look at pictures of them, the outer perimeter also features a number set. So 13 in the center, and then 28 days. And so there would be 28 little microsegments. I just thought this was fun. This is a personal piece, and conversation on change. So you have your 12 months of the year, but 13 moon cycles, and so moon is month. And we're disrupted in time. We would love that it would be a perfect circle, that the creation would would be a perfect circle and that it would be 360 degrees, but it's not. It's got extras, and this anomaly, or this 13 and extra, it affects us. Certainly, the biggest effect is sun power. Again, I didn't mean to start this with illustrative pieces that are mine only, but they tell a story about philosophy and about adapting to change. And so the big change here, conversation point, is the atmosphere, environment, living, whatever it is that we live in, this earth realm has, forces that are impacting us from the outside, celestial forces. Certainly the sine wave, or the master yin yang, is going to be the biggest thing. And so you have these very high highs and very low lows. This was an illustrative piece that came to me on the solstice in 2022, and I just felt it. You're in your garden, you're getting things ready, and you're in a scene, and being a plant wizard, if you ever did any gardening, it's just beautiful to cultivate and watch the earth come and wake. And this is the core, I believe, the core energy meaning in the naming of Wing Chun is that the Chun is the spring force that comes to life. It's the new dawn of a new growing season, and it is the most remarkable force effect that hits us is that spring. I'm filming this now. We're currently in the middle of winter, so we would yearn for this. But hot, beautiful days in the solstice with the heat overhead, and it tracks. And if you ever study where your sunlight comes from, it comes from south view, and then that falls in the winter, and then you see it rise, and you get a different sunset location in the summer. Again, this is a piece on that. So I always recommend get as much sunlight as you can tolerate and just enjoy it. It's like a beautiful gift, and it is probably the loudest thing shouting at us in the night sky. And anyway, if you imagine what's outside all of it, we live in a thing. What's outside of it? This is just I get these wonderful memes that hit me, and we have to look at yourself from the outside. And then as a philosopher, you would see things and topics from outside them. And I just thought this was pretty fun. We're consciousness, and then we look through the lens of this little human that we're in. Anyhow, time. So this is a circle back into medicine, and Chinese medicine specifically, in that the ancestors were following what they understood to be the rhythm of the human frame as the sun is coming and going. So if I'm going to bring a mouse into here, you can sort of see different times of the day would affect different systems inside us, and the harmony of these systems would either allow us to continue to regenerate and wake up feeling refreshed, and then when we go to sport, that we would have endurance and power, and that we would be seeing our muscles grow, and if we're doing flexibility, that we would see that flexibility increase. If you wake up stiff, or you wake up with pain, or you've had a piece removed, each of these things I would assume can tag you at different times, and I don't know the validity of this chart, but it looked like a really nice one. Shout out to these people who developed it, and screenshot this if you want to have your own copy of it. Just beautiful things that could be looked at as you go through the different times of the day, and then as we get to the sun falling, and time for rest and to fall asleep. And the liver detoxes at a very particular time when you're in this, if you go to bed at the right time, you're in that deep chunk area. That's where our blood is processing, and consciousness leaves, you're dreaming. And so, all of those systems can purge themselves. Anyway, awesome that there's charts developed like this, and that in some way, if you watch our previous episode, you'd see on Chinese medicine, all the charts of the frame of the human body, how all the organs are connected. And again, pulling this back to time and the movement of forces outside us. The sun is changing, and the darkness is coming and going. And then the temperature changes, gets colder, gets warmer. So all this just maps the day. There's also this seasonal situation that you're going to want to look at. Okay, you can see, again, I've got stuff from all over the web. I love this guy, David Avocado Wolf. Shout out to him. The analema, or this change that occurs in the sky as the celestial bodies go up and down, they've been mapping it. Here's a chart. I don't know how accurate it is, but it looks pretty sweet. And so you can see these, large, wide spectrum movements, and comes back down. That's your yin yang. That's the sine wave. That's the master motion of the seasons, and it's not straight. Here's somebody did a time lapse. Again, this could be Photoshop, but you could see some of these all over the place. Somebody dedicated, sat in the same spot, took the same photograph, and you can watch the moon does this same behavior, called the analema. Incredible. So this tells you that something is wobbling. Whatever we're doing, whatever it's doing, the sky clock does this very beautiful wobble. And how amazing that they developed the yin yang shape, of course, to maybe give a homage to this. Okay, I'm going to go to my next topic, time and seasons. I'm going in and I want to talk about the spine. So again, I grab these charts from all over the web and I play with them and I hold them and I read them in my spare time, and then once in a while, and lately I've been sharing them with anybody who's got an interest in this work. So philosophy of life, philosophy of the change, your back, your spine, your center column is this pulse echo of the sine wave. I mean, look at the thing waving in its natural design. We do a lot of work in form work where you would straighten it and open it and elongate it. And that's for muscle development, for power generation. But when it sits on its own and it's kind of unchambered, you'll see this natural sway to it. And so movement is important, change is important. If you sit still, I'm sure many of us are not good at sitting still, so we need to be entertained. But so if you're sitting still, you can just expect the same effect that would happen to water when it sits in a pond. That's what's going to happen in you if you don't move. And so we need to take an echo from this celestial realm and the sky clock in that it changes and it's a wave. And we need to make sure that all of our bones get some movement in them as often as possible. So the Kung Fu arts provide probably the best vehicle for developing your spine and for developing your whole body. It's the mind that's also important. And so if we see what we are physically made of, you can start to really intellectually grab and say, I don't understand this. And so when I get a pain here, I know maybe what maneuver or a stretch or what form element I might want to do in order to open this up. We get into some numerology as you start to map the spine. So we had the two. Well, we have one big system. We have the yin yang, that's two. The sine wave of it going up and down. You have this analemma of the sun and the moon doing their wave. The spine obviously has its wave, but it's built in chunks. 7 for the neck, 12 for the thoracic, and then 5 for the lumbar. And the sacral plate is actually a ton of bones all fused together. And you have a couple more here. You have like 3 little guys at the bottom. The sacral plate is, I think, 4 fused together and some more. And it's not so important maybe to memorize their names, but to understand where they are. And when you get pain, or if you see a result, a symptom, or stiffness, pressure, whatever it is, you can look inside here. It's a beautiful chart, and you can sort of self-diagnose. This is why chiropractors do offer some relief to people that they serve, depending on the nature of the injury, is that they can help get stuck bones moving again. So if your bones are jammed or jacked up because you're not living right, or you're not moving properly, or you've injured yourself, they can help you get this thing back to a place where it moves. But the key is that you want to get back to control of it so you can move it. Going to the next piece. These charts, it's just wonderful. The web's got so many artists and illustrators out there, myself included, but some of these charts are pre-made, so as you study, they're just built. Look at this guy wobbling. So if you got a shoe that wears out on one side, or you got a bunion or something you're trying to avoid stepping on, or an old ankle injury, or knee injury, or hip, shoulder, neck, doesn't matter. Look at what's happening. And this little chart obviously talks about imbalances that you'll see, shortness of breath, neck pain, headaches that you can't get rid of, tense shoulders, okay, shoulder restriction, low back pinching, sciatic nerve pain, of course stress because you're in pain. You just want to chill. You can't chill because you're in pain, and you're going to go work out, but you can't because you're in pain. And you do work out, but the pain, you just fight through it. Then you suffer the next couple of days icing yourself trying to figure out how to get back. So this is a conversation on stance, I would think. When I saw this chart, I said, okay, just do your Selam Tao. Just stand straight. Just get vertical. Match your legs. And I just think this is a perfect illustration for lack of harmony. Although, yes, you could argue it has that sine wave change. The trouble with change is that it changes so much, as in footsteps or imbalances, that where can we find balance? How can we find harmony in this change? And it's a balance of the two. But I'll go into Wing Chun. It's about getting centered. So on the topic of crooked, getting centered, these devices are killing us. If you're watching this on a phone, pick your head up, put it in a place on the counter in front of you or something, or just listen. Put it in place, put it on the big TV, right? Don't let this happen to yourself. Everyone's going to need neck fusions. Everyone's going to need, they're going to have torn rotator cuffs, torn shoulders. We've got to work what we see in our first form. And anybody studying the Chinese martial arts, you learn this. You got to get your posture up. You got to get that frame up. You got to put your ears and put them over your hips and just enjoy being upright. Look at the weight difference. Okay, look at it. Get off your phone. Put this on. Just listen to me talk, or put this on a desk. Right. Anyway, again, I find pieces and resources from all over the place. This is from a fellow named Ryan Seven. Shout out Ryan Seven. He's on YouTube and he's got an incredible channel about that sky clock and ancient symbolism. And this is a piece he developed. And I only brought it in here, not so much that I can qualify any of these little symbols here as that they relate to this, but they're talking about the sky clock. They're talking about the heavenly change. And they're talking about this wave. And so there's this law, as above, so below, as within, so without, something to that effect. And that's cool. It sounds great, but what does it mean? Why would they say it? And so here it is, illustrated, right? We have this pulse wave inside us, right? If we go back to the spine, you have 33 bones. 33, that's an interesting number. You have 7, right, that lift you up. 12, there's an interesting number. Although we had the 13 moons, we do have the 12 seasons, 12 major changes of the sun, you could say. There's some relationship. That's kind of fun. The original old 7 planets, or the 7 chakras, here illustrated in the neck. 5, beautiful, the 5 elements, 5 ancestors. It's just awesome that these things can relate. So as you start to see, like the Kundalini energy they call, or what they refer to as the different chakras coming up, they put little planets on each of them. And I think that's fun. And that actually makes a lot of sense. If the planets are what they are, is that they're celestial pieces on the clock, and they're spinning or doing something, and absolutely affecting the growth patterns of us here, the creatures on this realm. So the moon's movement and the sun movement certainly are the major ones, which we could see. And these other ones, if you saw them, they run similar patterns. They do these wobbling, flower of life designs that just spiral in the same way every year. There is some very subtle change over long time periods, but ancestors saw it, encoded it into all their symbolism, and it's everywhere. And so here it is, like all the chakras rising, upper 7 centers. Again, having fun. Some of this, you'd have to watch his work to get a deeper meaning in, but I wanted to pull this up because we're on the topic of the spine, and take a look. Keep going. Again, another vertical display of this. If you have pain in anything of your body, things are going to sleep, it hurts, whatever, you feel pressure. It could be that your organs are damaged or polluted, or missing, or injured, and that could be why the bones hurt. You could of course see all of these symptoms that would happen as a result of them. So any of the symptoms are the result of whatever is happening in this main column. I'm not saying that you can just get your back straight and fix them, but certainly you should be looking to get your back straight, and then you should be looking at what's out and regularly managing the two. If your bone is out, you're going to get pressure on that nerve. You're going to get low electrical output into the region, and it'll just keep going. Sometimes, again, to my previous conversation on this topic, if you have a lot of food in your stomach and you don't use the restroom often, or you're eating very dense, sluggish, oily foods and it's stuck in you, you're going to see the whole belly and the whole lower back get pressed. And this is, again, like all this stuff that's large and small intestines just full of stuff. You're going to get pain down here. So we'll get into that next in the next piece here. We're going to talk about food, but I need to stay in the spine for a few more pieces. We're on the lower back. This muscle, I say it's psoas, but it's psoas with a P. But you have a few straps, and the key underline here is not so much how to say it, but where it lives on us. It's basically what attaches our legs to our entire body. And if we were running around on all fours, it would have some importance, but it would have less importance because you have the upper set that would manage it. But because we are upright, and this is like what makes us special, gives our brain its ability to have extra power, all the vertebrae going up. This is the strap center. When they talk about the dantian, this is it. It's all those lumbar. It's both hip sockets. It's the sitting bones, sacroiliac joint. It's the 2 hips. It's the sacrum, and it's all of those lumbar that hold power, that hold lifting potential. So if this is tight on you because you sit too much and you never stretch, you're going to know. You'll get back pain. If you don't eat a good diet and you've got tons of additional food waiting in your stomach at all times, um, if you're constipated, things like this, you have a large stomach area. It may not be that you're the fat. You might just have tons of food in you and it just needs to be removed. And there may be 10 pounds sitting there. Imagine you carry a 10-pound weight on your waist all day. And imagine what your back is going to feel like. So you can do yoga to help actually improve the movement of your guts and also the pliability of this muscle structure. And then in your kung fu, you're going to see that you're loose and nimble. And if you did any kind of weight training, you'd notice that you feel good in this region. We've got to use it. We've got to stretch it. And certainly got to be mindful of how much food we allow in that region of the body. Okay, again, like here, this area, small intestines, large intestines, appendix. You carry too much there, you're going to be in pain. Right. So if you're in pain in your skeleton, and you take a look at this next graphic, you'll see, what happens to you when even the top of you is out of alignment. Again, I use this chart, and it helps me make a connection between what we're seeing in our very first form concepts into daily actions and daily maneuvers. So you see if his head is slightly out because his shoulder is torn, and his hip is slightly out because a knee is torn, or one arch is fallen, or you've broken a toe, or you're missing a toe. You can see these imbalances in just natural standing. So whenever being treated maybe by a chiropractor or a medical professional, if they're looking at your skeleton, they may have you just stand there and just observe you. You can see this in a lot of people, so I would invite everybody to go into the mirror and take a minute, relax, and then just observe what your natural tension is. And the good news is that we're not just our bones, we're also mass of straps and cords, and we are completely in control of that. So as evidence in our first form, if you work at aligning all of these elements and studying symmetry, you can really correct a lot of imbalances. I guess the last comment here, like if the head is misaligned, this could be from neck trauma, or it could be from head trauma, and if you got a missing tooth on one side. These small things could be a factor in the way your body wants to maneuver without any effect on it. Of course, you can fix yourself. You can improve yourself by stacking, aligning, looking for symmetry, and attempting to develop a really clean balance. Okay, and to keep going. Next one here. Just back into this. Again, every bone connects through nerve centers to every organ. And as simple as you could read anything, this is just a map. You can just see it. There's definitely the three large regions, and then the bottom pelvis area, lower dantine, middle dantine. And then as you get in, you can see our thoracic vertebrae, although they're labeling them D here. I would put a T in front of that. But your thoracic vertebrae, that's, heart, lungs, stomach. You can see, structuring the solar plexus positioning, right here, solar plexus. We would be taught dantine, solar plexus, and third eye. You would attempt to stack all of these pieces. So I don't know, solar plexus reads as if it's the front of the body, but you can see then from that branch comes into all these organs. So strengthening this, structuring this is really valuable. Cervical, obviously, teeth, salivary glands, ability to swallow, vision, anything to do with the nose, etc., is all going to be dealt with. And of course, the arms as well are all managed here inside the cervical. The brain, I love this chart because all the chords, you can now read it like you were an electrician reading and mapping a house. Any of my electrician friends out there, you take a look at this, you go, oh, I got it. So wherever you have pain, you have limited chi flow, and of course you can manipulate the bone. It might be that the bone is out and that causes the whole thing. But maybe, again, to the previous point, what caused the bone to go out? Was it impact, or was it just lifestyle? Is it an overburdened organ? Anyway, I believe yoga and qigong and active kung fu forms work will right many of these wrongs. Okay, go to the next, see what else we got. This is beautiful. So I get all these treasures from all over the web. Who knows, but you then take an analytical mind and you're looking at maps and you see symbols through the ancient world, and you could see how they're just illustrating a map. and how, again, how important we are, and the middle of us is, and the things we're made of. I mean, look at the brain. It's the eye of Ra. You could see it. They must have dissected brains, okay, but maybe they knew a lot more than we did in terms of the power that the thing had. Logically, you'd assume, but then if you really get scientific, right, boy, what a wonderful machine we are. The scarab beetle, yes, it's a creature exists, but my goodness, you can't shake the similarity between its design and the human skull from above. It's fascinating, and so I believe anytime you'd see scarab beetles, that they're symbols for us. The Holy Grail is controversial because there's also of course, one down below, but look, it's the head, it's the cup. It means it's the holiest. What is it? 7 holes in the head. The brain, the nose of Ganesh, just hysterical. So Ganesh is the remover of obstacles. If you study any of that, I'm a absolute beginner in any of the theories of the symbolism that goes with Ganesh. But look, it's you. So you're the remover of your own obstacles. So philosophy, what a wonderful thing. Like, you see yourself in these stories, and then you come back into the temple, you study it as a real actual landscape, and you can develop it. I think this is the essence of Kung Fu, is you're developing the temple. And if you look at these characters and say, oh, that's someone I'm supposed to draw, that's my favorite action hero, you've missed the meaning. You've missed it completely. And the same could be said for these other elusive things that people are chasing. Okay. Again, another chart. Just screenshot these if you like them. You can see how each vertebrae and the number set of this, again, just gets detailed. If you want to look at the bones from another viewpoint. If this structure is twisted or out left right, usually that's the most common. They'd be twisted out right. That's what you're going to see as the result in the bone. You'll feel tension. You'll feel weakness. You'll feel pressure maybe. And in worst cases, if you never treat it, you'll feel pinching, and what that's doing is cutting, or putting a pressure on a hose, and or folding it. And so, how can you expect to get current to go through the thing if it's folded? We're not electrical entirely. We're electrical, and we're also full of fluid. So in our tissue salts and the system, the metal that's in us, etc., the iron that's in our hemoglobin, it's sending a chi pulse, spark electrical pulse through the fluid. If you've kinked the hose, what do you expect to happen? So, although probably electricity will still flow, it's going to be diminished. Anyway, I don't even, if I have yard work to do, or I've got to do something that's really physical, involves lifting, I won't begin that until I've made sure, do a little light yoga to test my spine and put it back in place. Just by turning left or right, look at your Chum Q form. If you start getting good at turning your core and turning your entire system, the throwing and catching, sometimes you can get your bones to go back in place. Don't do it too hard, but just forming that left right and pulsing left right, that changing of the wave form can put the lateral changes back in and get you moving again. Again, if you're fused, I would be very, very careful with how you do any of our form work, especially if it would be with heavy power, because the torque snap maybe isn't good for the structures if they're fused together. I'm not a doctor. You got to ask your doctor about that. But in general, posturing and suspending and getting very vertical in this way has to be good for everybody, no matter the ailment, right? And again, another little chart. This is maybe, I wish it was more clear, but you find these things online, and they come from different sources, and they're illustrations from old books or reinterpretations of illustrations. Just wonderful, North Star, compass of the celestial clock above us, with Polaris as an anchor point, so you'd anchor yourself to what feels like magnetic north. And then you see this microcosmic orbit where we're basically a plant. That's our seed. Our entire system is its own planet or its own, entity. And this is just cool. They name all these things, but it's like chi going up, fire rising, water cooling, or you can do this in reverse, fire rising, water cooling. Love when people conjure these illustrations and they get us, just one more, outside yourself viewpoint of the way that we're made. And this is my favorite. I think that's why I grabbed this, is because, boy, look at that. We're a plant, basically. Okay, into my next conversation point. So I was on the spine. We were on times and seasons. I was on the spine, and I go into just a little bit of philosophy. And it's going to quickly divert into another topic. I'm sorry this video is so long. I may cut it. And so starting here, we'll get into the idea of philosophy truly. And so what makes a person insecure and what makes them confident is the depth that they hold in a topic. Whatever, I think confidence matters. Even if you're insecure, you should still fake it till you make it. But if you get humbled, you should respect that the other person has a depth in their field or in whatever it is they're good at. I would just try to offer everybody the same approach, and I think maybe I would like to be iceberg at the top and bottom. But you could see that that's typically the difference. Is someone who's really got skill they don't care. They're not trying to prove anything. They don't care. And someone that's insecure is really out in the front trying to prove who they are and living in their ego. And instead, like, you need to develop depth. You need to develop what's below the fold here, right? Or what's below the ocean line. Just thought that was a cool graphic. On the first thought here is ego. And so as you go into philosophy, sacred geometry is my next topic, but they're right there next to each other because philosophy, what does this mean? It's to, study the things and their details and to theorize on how they function and maybe then to develop a formula for how you would live your daily life, how you would spend your time. And if you are in contemplation, where do you put your contemplation? So this is like incredible. The Wing Chun sword is based on the number 8. They call it the Bat Cham Do. And 8 is just a perfect illustrative number for the analemma per our previous conversation. So in sacred geometry, you climb 1, 2, 3, etc. up until you hit 8, and then you hit 9. And each of them get their sacred, attribution. So this is just kind of fun, going down the scales, coming up the scales. You see this, seasonal living and dying illustration in this piece. And boy, very humbling. I mean, just incredible. Worried less about this and more into this because you see the number stacks and how the times them by 8 and what happens to them. And boy, oh boy, it's incredible. I guess you could back way far up and just only count 1. You could say, well, you're just counting the same one over and over again. And so I do almost like core of Wing Chun on everything I see, which is to put them back to their single point and their simplest point. So these are all just 1s, but boy, when you put them on 8, just incredible. So that lucky number 8, I think, is really cool. And I want to just share this in terms of sacred geometry. This is more about how numbers play and how important that 8 is in that flow set, right? And then 1 through 9. So we have circular frames that are built into existence. And what is it they say in the old writings is that Metatron was the first creation. And it's so funny. And you give things names and you think you understand them. And so, all right, cool. This is Metatron's cube. Can you see the cube? It's a 6-sided dice, right? And they say from this you would see the formation of molecules of the various things that we know to exist. So you could then see this from a different lens and say, well, that's a tree of life. You'll see the Kabbalah built into this design as it stacks up to the tree of life. You see like repeat patterns, right? And you can see the number 13. 13 circles of 5 give you Metatron's cube. So to my previous point, these 13 months, these 5 elements, this like system that echoes in this way, although it's not perfectly symmetrical like these drawings, it's darn close. What a humbling piece to see that we're just numbers and that we're just these frequency patterns. And I think like as a historian, like you see these ancient numbers in our symbolism and you go, oh, that's all right. I'm into this. 13 and 5. Okay, I can memorize this. And look at how they work, right? Keep going. This is, again, work from Ryan Seven. He took the septagon and he placed it on a side profile of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And, all right, so the argument is that many of these transitional lines intersect and that the pyramid was built on the septagram. It's inner chamber work, like the lights that come out and the angles that come across and the location of this on the chamber lines. And this crosshairs down below, this is not perfect. This is just a quick Photoshop overlap, but I thought that was just awesome. So whoever built that, allegedly, maybe used this septagon as its base framework. and maybe to do that as a way to make a message to anybody that would study it, there you have it. So I don't know. I mean, I just look at this like, well, what's down in here, and is there anything up above, chambers that would be on some of these other lines? I don't know. Anyway, and he's saying Stonehenge is built in the same way. And so when you have 7 points, this is the 7 days of the week. This is that 7 cycle. It's that 7 is a sacred number, and seventh day God rested. All these things are so cool. We have the 7 is so sacred. Maybe that's why they named the 6.5 point pole. So there's fun with some of that stuff as you bring it into Wing Chun theory. But anyway, 7 is just incredible. Okay, we go into it. You can see flowers are 5s and 6s, 7s and 8s. 6s and 8s. I guess they skip the 7s, but that's so cool, right? Sacred geometry shows you that there's a design pattern in everything. And these 5s and these 6s and these 8s, they're like effortless ways that reality organizes itself. It's searching a path of least resistance, and so we don't resist them. They're not evil symbols or magic symbols. They are magical. They're just observation of geometry and things. And anyway, they're just a series of numbers. To another topic, which is related to the Qigong arts and related to breathwork in particular, and has to do with the sounds that you can create with your voice in accord with the way that you might breathe. This is a graphic, I wish I had a better copy of it, but taken from the work of Mantak Chia. If you know a bit of his work, he's all over the web, and he's prolific in his work of sharing Qigong efforts. And so you can, I guess you could screenshot this and maybe get a little bit closer to what you're seeing here. But if you just follow my mouse, the lungs and maybe a gesture that goes with them, you would use the sound s with the tongue behind the teeth. With the kidneys, sitting or in a comfortable position, you would use the word ch, which is like a ch sound and the air coming out. And if you study this, you do a breath, try the sound, observe what part of the body is being shaken or agitated or awoken with that sound. And the next would be the liver. Again, some of these postures are up for discussion. I've heard of them leaning or doing different poses, but in the liver, they'll use the word shh, which is different than the word s or the sound s. So lungs, kidneys, liver, the heart, as if you're like creating a heat out of your mouth and you're in cold weather and you want to make steam. I hope you can hear this in the microphone. Anyway, you see this here in the illustration, and maybe some of the stretches that go with some of this. These are done seated because a lot of folks who are unwell can't wander around, can't do kung fu forms, but they can sit, and so they can benefit from that time where you're doing a seated meditation, and maybe some of this practice. Okay, keep going. The spleen, and then so you may have to do a little bit more work if you don't know what a spleen is. But you notice he's holding his insides. It's a little bit below the stomach area there. And then the last would be the triple warmer, and you can barely see this because this graphic is fuzzy. It's and triple warmer is a whole series of organ systems together. But so really cool that there's an actual modality, somebody's mapped it, and that these traditional sounds exist. And so in my next piece, let's see if we find it. You go to Google, and Google knows all about it. So you ask them, what other healing sounds include? And there's a small summary. And again, screenshot this if you want to keep this. And you can see that depending on what you want to alleviate, you can create a noise that goes along with the actual breath practice. So in Tai Chi, Qigong, and of course, we're being alienated here, but in Wing Chun, when you do first form, when you do any forms, solo practice, flexibility work, you should be conscious of the breath work. Hopefully your instructor gave you that as one of the earliest lessons, is that you needed to bring in new fuel and you need to learn how to breathe properly, and either in a calm way or in a very particular way. And this is found all over the yoga arts, where they would be focused on maybe squeezing during inhales and exhales, and or elongating or holding. In the Qigong, you might hold the breath and press it for a few seconds into the regions that may be unwell or giving you pressure. And of course, just looking at your chart, maybe you want to do a whole body system, so you might do 5 breaths in a row and each one gets a different sound. Or if you've got the mental power, you would pick just one that you think might need a little bit of love, and you might do 10 of those. This could be done any time of the day. You're driving the car, you're in line at the grocery store, you're idle waiting for anything, you can continue to train even though you're not in a formal classroom. Okay, healing sounds. And another picture. This is an illustration you can find by a man named Walter Russell, and he has a whole bunch of these. And although this might be a replica of his original work, it looks very similar. And what he's trying to illustrate is this major, power force that I've been showing in the last of these few slides here, is the serpent energy or your chi energy rising up the column from the dantian up through the crown, water rising or fire rising, water cooling, depending on how you see this here. But this is a beautiful illustration of, power going up, circling you, power going up, circling you. You can feel that potential energy inside of all the organ systems, leg systems. And although these, this is very in-depth. Somebody went out of their way to really talk about the power that travels through each of these. They're talking about the electric conductivity that hits the system and that irradiates around us. And this hypothesis here, I suppose, is that we are a gigantic toroidal field, and the center of us is that magnetic middle or the resistive middle. And so then, just like a north-south on a magnet, this is the effect that's happening. If you could illustrate it, we don't see it. If you're not into meditation, you won't find it. If you do meditate, meaning you get very slow and very still and just breathe, maybe close your eyes. Sometimes these visualizations can help you imagine, the awareness of the body, the feelings inside the body. And of course, you can power yourself up. They're really cool. That's another little piece I grabbed, and it just relates to this. Shout out to this doctor lady who's out in no man's land here. She's constantly getting banned, but she's got great work. It's controversial, much of it, but this is just a great thing. Bach's Cantata number 169 increases blood flow to the brain more than any other classical piece tested. So if you're looking to lower your cortisol levels and have a direct, change in the way that your heart is behaving, you can listen to classical music. And of course, you'd have to go find her channel, find this post, and you could see this abstract of somebody who did this actual test. Just fascinating, just fascinating. I take everything you find on the web and I go, that's interesting. Is it worth holding on to? When you read the paper, they did the test and these things are really possibly affecting us. So sound matters. All right, here's another one, same post in one of her other slides. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony literally stops cancer cells from growing. And this is again like from a research paper where they've exposed the person to this music, and the spread has decreased. Slowed their spread by 20% and decreased in size. So I don't know how long this was going on for, or that this wasn't, of course, put in with other modalities, but just as evidence that sound can create a resonant effect inside us. It goes back to this previous piece. I'm going to keep going more. Here we go. Is that the sounds you make can instill power in you. Certainly these words I'm even letting out of my mouth, either they could be aggressive or they could be thoughtful. I'm trying to come from an angle of, being curious and asking questions and trying to keep our minds open for things that may or may not be possible or plausible. So anyway, healing sounds. So not just in your Qigong work, not just, imagining your skeleton and feeling for pressure. You can actually create sounds, you can listen to sounds, and they can have an actual effect on us. Right? Go into the next. And so now, sounds are one thing. Sounds are what happens to us on the outside. And then those sound waves hit us, they go inside us, and they can affect us. And so I'll use like a simple case study. If somebody says something nice to you and gives you a compliment, you feel like you want to be their friend. If they say something insulting and try to belittle you, you may want to hit them in the head. So the power of words matter, and the power of the sound that comes with those words and the energy that comes with those words matter. That is, you could say it's one of the pieces of your diet. And so then, in this same breath, we get into diet. What is happening inside us when we eat food? We need it. You have 4-element theory. You have, air, fire, earth, and water. So we need air, check. We need water, fresh water. You got to drink some. We're made of water. All our fluids inside us require a certain pH balance and a certain amount of water. And we need wind. We know this. The fire, the wind going into the lungs together. The wind and the water together can produce the fire. The fire is now underwater. That's our spark. That's our chi. That's the electrical force that's in the air that we transmuted. And then we need earth. You have to eat stuff. I guess there's people who can just drink sunlight and eat, the D of let's see, the dew from a single ginkgo leaf and the power of the universe. The rest of us have to have breakfast. So when you eat, that food combines with you, and then it sits inside you, and the microflora inside us will digest it further and crush it further and rip it apart further and possibly get us some of the smaller nutrients that are found within it. So we are an ecosystem inside. So whatever you put inside you then has an effect. Foods that create mucus, foods that don't create mucus is what I've got here on the screen. And you just look at this. This is not an all-inclusive list, but it's like a quick hit list. I wouldn't worry about butter, and I wouldn't worry about maybe corn as much or cheese, but the heavy ones like a refined corn, a corn syrup, the bread, a very very fine white flour, which is basically just dust, just pure, almost basically pure sugar. Potato chips, because it's a refined pulverized potato, unless you could cut a real potato and make it yourself. Fast food, they're just showing the burger and fries. And that's not fair, because what's inside the burger and what kind of bread is it made of? And then are those natural potatoes? But let's just say it was all the worst of the worst, and you're sick with a cold and you can't get well. What are you eating? And are you making that process happen slower, or can you speed it up? So when you eat something that's made of sugar or a simple carbohydrate, your body's first response to that is to digest it, to dissolve it, and depending on what it's made of, you'll have either an acidic reaction or not. I'm sure you always have some acidic reaction. It's just that certain elements brought in will have larger effect than others. So if you just eat a piece of white bread, the acid effect of that is so great, your body says, oh no, we have acid. What do we do? So we need to neutralize the acid. So how does it neutralize acid? Well, it draws from your bones, the calcium from your bones, and it tries to neutralize that acid. So not only will you lose bone density and possibly lose tooth density, but you have to control the acid. So right away, that change, that chemical effect from acid to getting it neutralized, is it creates a mucus effect, and so that we're not burned by the food inside us. So you may say, I don't like watermelon, or I can't just eat romaine lettuce. And this is not, again, not an all-inclusive list, so we're going to go deeper here. But you could just look at quickly, foods that eliminate mucus are quite different than foods that create it. Right? I would look at this from a topic standpoint. Like I wouldn't just isolate these exact products. We're going to keep going. I have some number of friends and family members that are challenged by kidney challenges, and so we'll go down a little bit of a conversation on the kidneys themselves. If you remember the healing sounds, it's the sound that shakes the kidney and gives it a little bit of a bounce, and that bounce, I believe, can help the way that it functions and help it kind of squeeze itself, and so that it's like a little sponge that's improving its movement, improving its method. So the kidneys are very powerful. All of the blood goes through the system, and oxygen-rich blood comes in, nutrient-rich blood comes in, and then the particles that we don't need are separated. So it is a very important system, and in the Chinese medicine, it's considered the batteries of the body. So if you're dealing with kidney challenge, it means your batteries are low and or they're faulty. If you were ever injured in your kidneys, or one of them didn't grow completely, or you're dealing with a deep disease, you're going to see a lot of effects, and the most primary one is, they say, low energy. If you're always burned out and you're always, burning the candle from both ends, you're going to feel drained, exhausted, and so you might caffeinate or, do other things to stimulate yourself. And unfortunately, what happens is eventually you burn out your batteries. So good news, you can eat in a way that will help purify your blood, and that is great for the kidneys to just get them cleared out and cleaned up. And I guess the major issue here is like when you eat it, how it's prepared. Sometimes people can't handle raw, so you could always cook these foods, but take a look at the categories. This is not everything. There's much bigger lists, but you can just see all that looks like a walk through the garden, and you're going to get great improvement for your kidneys. Boosting the immune system, this is a relative conversation. When they say immune system, what do they mean? It's like a catchword, like you try to explain it. You say it, you think you can explain it all. The immune system is the entire body, and whether it's a place of homeostasis. meaning like it's working well, it's regenerating properly, and you feel like you have energy. You wake up in the morning, okay, you're tired, but you feel like you have some strength to go on. Foods to boost the immune system. So almonds, red peppers, dark chocolate, olive oil, pickles. I mean, all these things have got an idea here. You may look at this and say, I don't like some of these ingredients or all of them together. Don't look at them as all of them together. Look at them in a categorical way. Um, and now not everybody tolerates these foods well, and or I wouldn't recommend salmon from a can. But you start to go into some of this, and there's a logic that's found in everything you're watching. It's that it's very close to its natural state. Maybe the exception here would be the olive oil, and I would say right away, be careful where you buy your olive oil because a lot of it is not olive oil. There's not enough olive trees in the world to produce the amount of olive oil that is currently being sold on today's market. So you need to find a single source, and you need to maybe pay a little bit more to get something that's real. Some people eat olive oil. Some people rub it on their skin. People put it in their food in an incredible number of ways. Of course, you cook with it. So the other one here would be dark chocolate, and again, chocolate's the same thing. There's so many people that make it, and most of it is artificial. When you get a dark chocolate, it's got a large amount of cacao. It's more natural, and I think what really people need in the dark chocolate is the magnesium, not so much the sugar or any of the oils that bond us together. And you got to look at chocolate because right now all of it's being basically emulsified with soy oil, and they'll call it soy lecithin, and it's basically soy oil. And what that does is that's what glues it together. So hard to find it without that. You find it with the cocoa butter elsewise, which is of course superior in taste and also in nutritional value. You could go into each of these pieces and say, well, what does each one have, and why is it good for our immune system? And again, full of nutrition, full of vitamins and minerals, and very close to its natural source. That's what boosts the immune system. If you look at the things that create mucus, and I would just raise my hand for like pasteurized milk, white bread, sugared ice cream, nasty fast food. None of that's going to help you. They taste great. I'm not going to lie. They taste great, but they're going to destroy you slowly. The more of it you put in, the more your body has to work to get rid of that stuff. The kidneys have to work to get rid of that stuff. And I should say, especially in the fast food and potato chips, they put so much artificial salt into it that it'll just cut you to pieces and burn you up and cause all kinds of problems. So I'm not saying you shouldn't salt your food, but the point is that you need minerals, and the minerals come from the actual cell structures inside these living ingredients. So to have a healthy system and a philosophy of living well, you need to bring in natural foods. This is another little chart. Pears harvested in Argentina, potted in Thailand, sold in the United States. But your old car is the problem. A little map. Incredible. So this isn't against the idea of pears in a cup. I didn't put this up here for that reason. It's to bring it up in that you need to bring your food as close to, you ought to have food that was grown near the region you live in. When that's not possible, again, like the more natural state, the actual living plant, not in a cup, not in a corn syrup juice, and certainly not something that is, traveling all over the land. How long has it been in that jar that it traveled that far? And who packed it? And is it pear? So always be wary when you see a product that's been, got some of these labelings here, and you'd see this chart. The world we live in is so incredible and crazy, and everybody's so political. But look at some of the inefficiencies that are happening, and this is why we're not well. It's because of this convoluted way of doing commerce. Everything for the dollar. It's no hate on these, again, on canned pears, because sometimes they could be delicious, but in most cases I would skip them, go for the real pear. Another chart. Shout out to this guy, David Avocado Wolf. Love his work. He's crazy. His Telegram is amazing, and I've been following him for a decade plus. He's a plant wizard. And anyway, this graphic came through his channel, and so it's a very big topic right now. Everybody's worried about worms and parasites and what diseases parasites cause, and they cause a lot. That's the answer to that. And so how do you manage them if you think you might be dealing with an overgrowth of them, or you just want to level out your body? It's again back into food. Pumpkin seeds are probably the easiest thing you could get into. Raw pumpkin seeds, I don't know, a few times a week. Oregano oil you need to be careful with, but it's very powerful, good for fungus and good for just overall, bringing it through the system. They say it has better power almost than amoxicillin at managing bacteria overgrowth. So a few drops of that periodically, or if you're feeling sick, or as a pre-sick, whatever you think you're going to be with a lot of crowded people, you've been working hard and you want to maintain a little fortification inside you. Sometimes oregano oil can be valuable. Clove oil especially is very powerful and will absolutely destroy whatever worms are inside you. And so you got to be careful with it, that you don't take too much. So this is not a advice on how to do it, what to do it, but it's just like a symposium on all of the different products you can take that will uh, control parasite overgrowth. If you eat sushi or raw food, and if you're not cooking your food well enough, these babies might still be alive in the meat. They might still be alive in the food. They may have grown in the food while it was being processed. Um, there's a certain amount of maggots that are allowed on almost all the products. So if you that makes you squeamish, you look at some of these products. There's a lot of pills that are out there that include all of these extracts and these and ground up versions of these things, and they can make a nice benefit if you take them for a dedicated amount of time and you're eating well. At the same breath, you can just straight eat these raw things, and you're going to get the benefits from, right? Maybe that's why they put the clove in ham. Anyway, keep moving. So I went back to my previous topic on sugar. This graphic is just so powerful. Somebody put this together. The amount of sugar that's in some of the products that we love is criminal. So how do you find ones that are good? Well, you can start to look around and just read the label. It'll tell you what it's got. But tomato sauce is one of those ones. It's like, how do they get it to taste so good? Yeah, the tomatoes, yeah, the seasoning, but boy, they put a ton of sugar in it. So if you're lathering this all over your pasta or all over the other foods you're eating, you can expect an acid response and then a mucus follow-up response. Yogurt, again, they tout yogurt. Oh, you're going to get probiotics. It's going to be so good for you. They're pure sugar. They're basically candy. And some of these are worse than others, right? That's a ton of sugar for such a little cup, right? This one, of course, not so much. Of course, it has milk, so they may be including the milk sugar component of this, but they literally also add sugar to it. And so I would just be wary. Like if you're trying to manage yourself, the amount of sugar that comes in and the amount of mucus that's made are an exact match. So be mindful what you put. Okay. Next, this is less about picking your fruit and foods and more about observing yourself. So the plant world is exactly like the human world. They're going to show symptoms. Their leaves are going to show symptoms. The plant itself will display either distress or that it's living well by the color of its leaves. And so, although we're not plants, you're going to look at the color of your skin. You look at spots on your skin. You may look at the tone of your skin and your limbs and your hair and everything on the whole system. In a previous episode, we got into a conversation on the different realms of the body and the face and the ears and the fingers and the feet. They're all maps of the body. And so, like, look at this chart more as an entire systemic thing. If you need more water, you're going to know you're going to be dried up. You're just going to feel dry. If you feel torched and burned and like very red, maybe you need shade. If you're an outdoorsman, that's more obvious. You go to the beach, maybe need some shade. If you're pale and you burn very quickly, maybe you actually just need a little bit more sun more often so that you're in this sort of balanced state. Get a little bit of sun, you feel hot, go to the shade. Plant injury, this is again like, obviously this chart is about plants, but cuts and wounds and such are a telltale sign of an obvious injury. And so you can't expect great, vibrant life if you are physically injured. And so if you're injured, just hang in there. Sometimes they can be fixed. Fungal infections, you'll see spots. So if you've got spots, you don't know what's happening. It could be skin fungus. It could be dust mites. It could be what they call eczema or other things. And that actually could be caused by parasite excrement coming out of your system. Parasites come in many forms. Of course, they could also be these bacteria and funguses that are living on us and in us, and they're overgrowing. Here's another one, like it needs less water. That's not as common because in people, usually people are dehydrated. They're not overhydrated. But it is, you got to be careful. You don't want to drink too much water because you'll have an additional challenge that goes along with that. Right? Back to this diet and kidney stones. because the kidneys take the blood and they separate salts and they separate, extra products in the blood itself. They separate the plasma. When there's an excess of like a refined sodium, it tend to crystallize. You get your stones, and of course, if you're dehydrated, they just sit there. They hardly move. You need to flush the system. You need to move the system. You need to do the breath work. Again, the kidney sound is ch. And then you need to look at the way that you bring food in, what food you bring in, and what will actually have a nice effect on your kidneys if you did have stones or you're worried about it. Sometimes low back pain isn't actually from your bones, it can be from your organs that are upset at you because you're not loving them properly. Super salty foods, cold cuts, stuff like this is all difficult to process. As you get into some of this, some supplements also aren't made well and they're bonded together with different substrates that glue them together, and those aren't good. And then this whatever it is that they've sourced, again, like might not be high quality or might not even be what they say it is. So I would always be careful with supplements, but as an obvious hit list in this chart, extra calcium, too much D, and maybe too much C is hard on the kidneys. So if you're dealing with kidney issues, maybe you want to manage that you don't bring in too much of that. Again, like this is not an all-inclusive thing, but for folks that are dealing with kidney issues, there are some of these foods that are just too powerful, and you got to be careful with them. Certainly, like the wheat itself is just so starchy and so, um, you know, carbohydrate rich that again it's have this acid effect. Potatoes have the acid effect. Okay, the strength in very strong dark teas. Again, not hard chart here, and again, I don't have any reference to where this came from, whether or not this is worth looking at. But they talk about the oxalate power in foods, so you just want to be mindful that you're not overdoing one of these. And when you do look for nutritional things to bring in, you can look at some of these earlier charts. Going back to the topic on oil, this is a wonderful chart, and now the world has woken up and they're talking about this. Everybody in the health realm is talking about this. The oil that you cook with, the oil that you saturate your food with, the oil that your potato chips are fried with, that your French fries are fried with, that your fried chicken is fried with, whatever it is you're bringing in matters. So a lot of it is very low quality. In general, high pesticide when they're actually grown, and then of course like there's a linoleic acid factor in them. And I wish I was a little bit smarter at this. I could go into more detail, but just look at this chart, and it seems to me as you go down, coconut oil and butter are the kings. But you've got some of this palm oil and a real lard and avocado oil, and then that mid-level here, like the olive oil, which I guess to give a range for, are good. They're good for you. They're not going to have a high linoleic acid, and are in like a green the green to orange to yellow zone here. As you see, like peanut oil, they some places tout that it's so good, it's not very good. And the worst of these offenders is going to be like the safflower, grapeseed, sunflower, corn. Anyway, if you can avoid those oils, you want to try to. Many salad dressings, even the first ingredient is canola oil. And again, I guess you could ingest some of this stuff, but they're also massively pesticide sprayed, and so they're not good to begin with. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Again, these charts are just awesome. I think because if you are dealing with some of this, you could screenshot it, print it, post it on your refrigerator, and the next time you go shopping, you can make some different choices. I think that's where the real underline is when you go to the store. What do you put in the basket? Don't go hungry. Go with a shopping list and think about the combinations of meals you're going to make. But again, like this is not an all-inclusive thing, and so certainly there are pieces on this other side that are very good for you. Things that are high in potassium, oranges, cantaloupes, kiwi. This is not something that you would avoid if you're pretty healthy, but if you are dealing with kidney challenges, you're going to want to like manage this kind of list. Like certain choices are better than others, and I think it has to do with the amount of like chi in the plant, the amount of mineral content in the plant. If the kidneys are burdened, they just can't take extra mineralized food. They need kind of like light and easy to digest food ingredients. So you chew it, it turns into a mash. Your bacteria colony rips it out further. The juices inside you get all that stuff moving and going. Your body absorbs it. So what is it made of once it's been crushed and ripped apart? That's what goes through your system. Okay. And last in this little series on food is last of these killers here is the high fructose corn syrup. boy, sometimes you go to the store, you got a hankering for a candy bar or something, and you pick one up, and you feel guilty afterward. And whatever, the taste is what it is. But if you can't control that craving, you're going to suffer. So I mean, it's it destroys your liver. And of course, in general, the corn of America and the corn in most of the world here is not the best corn. Got to go find very special corn if you do want it. Um, Corn starch and corn seed oils, or corn, like here the high fructose corn syrup, just tragic. Coca-Cola, any and all sodas. So stop eating soda, drinking soda. These Many of these value, second-rate company products are littered full of the corn syrup. They taste good, yes, and after you eat them, you're like in a coma. They spike you with such a high spike of chi, and then it's pure acid. So then the body has again like this mucus response and this damaging response inside. And although some of it is the actual, the sugar effect, the other part is this carcinogenic effect of the pesticides that they grow these things in. So you have to be dedicated. You have to avoid them. That's a big part of this. Okay, keep going. Let's keep going. Nice. So
馬步喺功夫上係最重要嘅基礎，一定要練到攻守自如。如果唔係，好似你咁就冇晒重心。起身，八仙台係練詠春短橋嘅吹打手，即係話當敵人攻你嘅時候，你唔能夠後退，你要移身射力，力打對沖，去成對方嘅中位。上嚟！師傅，咩事啊？冇嘢啦。我睇喺練武嘅人入邊，你算係最蠢嘅。唔係我蠢，係你教得我渣啫。我哋詠春係以掌殺，任何一個部位都可以進攻同防守。點解唔打我？你要記住，上場無父子，舉手不饒人。上嚟，好痛啊！哇，斷啊！休息下啦。哦，師傅啊，乜你啲腳打嚟打去都係下三路，冇上三路嘅？腳起咁高做咩？好容易失重心噶嘛，冇用嘅。
it's called the Kuji In, and I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. What it is it's what they call the 9 hand seals, or the mudras, or the mantras. It consists of 9 syllables. And in the charts I'm going to show you, there are some that have many more than 9, but this is like the original piece of this. And 9 characters. Originally this was Taoist and not Buddhist, and so then as it travels through the land from China to Japan, you're going to get their unique differences. But this really, really cool concepts on hand seals. Okay, so it's Kuji In. Okay, then the hand seals. Let's see if I can get this in screen here. I've been messing with these since I saw it. I didn't know what it was. A friend shared it with me, and I've been messing with these, looking for charts on it just to understand it. I read everything that Wikipedia has on it, and of course, in years past, studied with a Qigong master who was teaching us at least a couple of these, and didn't give them a name, just said, here's what you do, here, make it match mine, and you did it. And if you ever visit a Buddhist temple, you'll see many of the statues are holding these shapes, and we look at them just like, oh, that's cute, that's nice decoration, but what does it even mean? Most people walk by it. If you study it, you'd see that there's a whole science that goes with the way you position your hands. So the hands themselves are, again, a map of the body, and this is like the 5 pillars of creation is the 5 fingers and what we do with our hands, whether you build or destroy. If you're planning to build and you're looking to fortify yourself, which is the philosophy of martial art, philosophy of Wing Chun, I want to build the next best version of me, and every day I'll keep making it better. Your hands themselves can be employed to speed this process up. Okay, now this is showing 9, and in the next charts I'm going to show there's more of these, but bringing in, I guess that's the second finger, bringing in the first and last finger, holding just the pinky and pressing the thumb. If you saw in my previous episode on the traditional Chinese medicine charts, acupuncture charts on the hands and feet, you'll know that every hand, every finger, every region of the foot is a map of the body. And so these shapes actually open and create, residual effects in the person who deploys them. Okay. This is a really fun one and difficult to do. I recommend you try these and just see what happens to you. Some of them are for energy, some of them for strength, some of them for healing. Some of them are to bring awareness to yourself. If you're meditating and you don't know what to do with your hands, you could just leave them alone, put them on your lap. But if you do something with them, you can literally magnify the practice. Okay, you'll see celebrities putting this up, and it's manifestation. Sometimes you'll see people holding a shape. Some of these shapes are actually really enjoyable to hold, and look goofy if you did them with friends. So maybe you do them at home. But when you're with friends, you could interlock your fingers, or you could do this traditional fist and palm shape, and nobody knows what's happening. Certainly, this is a little bit odd looking, but like something like this, clasping the hands and holding it, no one would even know you're doing the work. Okay, when you keep going, again, this is another set, maybe a little easier to see it because it's not photographs, and they gave you a few angles. This first one is just so easy to do anywhere you are, and I find myself doing it constantly just in conversation, just to help still my mind. It works beautiful. Some of these other ones, again, like harder to do, but we just saw them, we kind of understand it. This very easy to do, and you may not notice that it gives you any effect until you start to do it for a little bit, and you'll notice that maybe it calms the mind. And although this doesn't give us the rest of the information like this one does, gives a whole bunch of names and what it's for. I wish it was sharper and better quality, but you could see it. These hand gestures, these hand seals make an impact. Okay, another chart, somebody talking about actual chi flow spiral power in the bones. In the Wing Chun art, we're going to be using our forearms so much in the empty hand system that you'll be smashing your forearms maybe, or taking contusions on them. And there's an art form to regenerating between classes. If you've had a hard kung fu workout, your forearms are going to hurt. If you've been doing iron palm, your hands might be sore. If you've been punching with a snap force, your elbows might be sore, the muscle wraps around them. So this is just a mindset thing of bringing power into the bones and packing around the bones and squeezing the muscle force. And this is something that happens when you're doing form. Certainly in the Silam Tao, in the early chapters, you've got the Wu and the Fuxao shaping that we'd be making, and that's got a lot of packing power as you press energy and you see what the muscles are doing. So with breath work, with the mind's intention, and then maybe with visualization, you can really see nice improvements. So if your hands are meant for healing, on the flip side of that, what happens when a wrist lock shows up? I just love these charts. I share these with friends, and I always ask people, hey, what should I cover in class? I don't know, takedowns. It's okay, wrist locks or takedowns. Anyway, if you're using your hands to heal yourself, imagine how detrimental it can be when someone grasps your hand and puts you in one of these locks. If you've ever been the recipient of a finger lock or wrist lock, you want to see stars. I mean, it's very painful. You'll comply right away. And it is almost like kung fu magic when it happens to you. You're like impressed that you get thrown so easily or dropped so easily because how much pain it causes. Another one, leg locks. In the same vein, like the hands and the feet are basically the same thing. They're just a little bit different design. So imagine what's being done to you and the detriment of these locking maneuvers. Now, in a multi-man environment, maybe you don't want to lock up with somebody, but in the sport arena and in a one-on-one match, if it's just you versus them, you could rip these people's legs to pieces. They may never walk again. And in the same idea, like wrist locks, ankle locks, and toe locks, all these things are just for destruction. Whereas if you go into the Kujian, this is for regeneration, to rebuild you. So live, growth and destruction. And then a beautiful chart somebody made years ago on the Wing Chun hands. Again, like just beautiful. You can see how the art form uses its hands to protect ourselves. When in this illustration, we're not showing how you'd use it to strike a person, but you could see how well it manipulates all the different parts of the arm, inside, outside, top side, bottom side, and using the palm or using the wrist or using combination effects. Just so cool. The hands are where the power lies. Okay, here's another one on the Kujian, and again, like maybe a little easier to follow. If you find yourself with an idle mind and an interest in meditation, you may just take some of these hand shapes and screenshot some of these. It'll tell you what it looks like and maybe what might be happening to you when you do them. Another one, again, like awesome that somebody took all this time to film them and that they had the actual ability to make some of these. Some of this stuff makes my head hurt. Like these are way easier. I'll do this one. I'll do this one. If you've tried to form this one, very difficult, very difficult. These with the overlocks. Again, though, if you stretch your fingers, this is like yoga for the hands. You stretch and you open up the systems of the rest of the body. So if the hands are a map of the body and you stretch them, or you strengthen them, or you hold them, and you breathe with this, you'll see, allegedly, you'll see an improved conductivity through the system. Another one, what they're just calling chakra awakening, which is sort of a generic alternate way of speaking about this. And this is where we come back to our numerology, is the 7 chakras in the human, of the sacred geometry. So you're 7. This is another chart. Again, I can't qualify it, but each of these different hand shapes can have a nice effect on the body depending on, what it is you're doing or what you're trying to stimulate inside you. And I just thought this was nicely illustrated. So if you're having a hard time visualizing some of these, there is another easy to read graphic on the same topic. Okay, another piece. In Taoism, the 5-element hand seal is used to command various ancient elements. So again, just another bit of maybe evidence that there are systems being employed by those that know for healing. At the same time, it could be for, manifesting what it is that you want in the world. So keeping on the topic of healing, each of these thumb, pointer fingers, etc., are all going to have different mapping systems. I will go to aiming to the previous episode where we look at actual maps of the hands, and you can see how each finger relates to each organ. And so I can't exactly qualify if this is a perfect match, but just so cool that they did this, that they mapped it. In the middle is the Tao. What you do with your hands matters. Do you build or do you destroy? Right, and then maybe the last chart here, just back on the feet. Your foot is a hand. It's just built a little different, but essentially it's the same thing. Your leg is an arm. And if you see it this way, if you have a knee issue or you have an ankle issue or a hip issue, it can often be because every time you place this thing down, you're doing it in an inconsistent way. And maybe, of course, it's injured, but maybe it's just weak on one side. And just like what we would do with our hand forms, eventually you'll get good at this and you'll maybe get into the sticky leg work of Wing Chun and you'll develop a more supple ankle and a more supple foot. And as you get into like tripping or sweeping, the foot now gets used a lot more like it were a hand. And again, like a foot that's got good agility is going to have the same effect as a hand with good agility. A foot with good flexibility, the same thing. So in your forms, your standing form really puts a nice pressure on the shin and the stretching of all of this. And then the hand form, like when you sit and do Wu Sao in the Silam Tao and you've got a good low first form stance, you're basically doing 2 pressure hands. You're doing a hand pressure and you're doing a foot pressure. If your foot is a hand, it's palms on palms. And what a beautiful bit of work. And so I'm going to leave you with this, and I know we covered a lot, and I know this was a bit of a rambling, and so I want to thank you for staying with me for so long, and we'll catch you in the next episode.